For today's video, it's basically answering a couple of questions, a lot of questions that you guys have posted in on either social media, my YouTube comments down below, or my email, and I felt like I should answer all these questions. I mean, I did already answer those who have asked me these questions personally in a written reply, but to share all these questions with like everybody else, I think I picked some of the very good questions that have came in over the past year for me to share with everybody. So I want to go with this should not take very long, hopefully. So the first question I got from one guy was, I went to view a bike and that guy told me that it is normal for a DRZ to top up engine oil every 2 weeks. Is it true? Okay, the answer to this is blatantly it's false, but I need to go in depth a bit. Now, you should check your oil level with the dipstick every month or 2 months, depending on who you are or how paranoid you are, to make sure that the oil level is correct, and top up if necessary, because every bike is different. So it depends on the bike, but particularly for DRZ, it's usually every 2 months I'll check it once. And the reason why bikes lose oil, other than DRZ, why bikes will lose oil over the course of their cycle before their next top up or next oil change, is that high RPMs, particularly in racing dirt bikes or sport bikes, gives more chances for oil to seep through the piston rings. So high RPMs means it goes up and down more. More motion means the oil gets moved up and down more, and that gives it more chances to seep in through the piston rings into the combustion chamber, and that's how you lose oil. Also, the other way oil is lost is when the engine gets hot, when you're using oil that's rated for cooler temperatures in environments that are hotter, or in a hotter engine, a high performance engine. It makes the oil thinner, and thus it's easier for the oil to seep through that piston ring, and you lose oil that way as well. So if you manage your oil temperature and cruise at a comfortable RPM on a pretty standard road bike, non-racing bike, you will usually almost never need to change your oil until the next interval, and that's especially true for the DRZ. And there's a guy parking beside my bike. Now, it is absolutely not normal to require topping up every 2 weeks for literally any road bike being sold in the mass market. And that is really only applicable to race bikes you see in MotoGP or MXGP, and those bikes are a totally different beast. So I'd be concerned about bike's condition for the guy that asked me this question if the seller is telling you that DRZ requires changing of the oil every 2 weeks. It's kind of hard to diagnose if the bike is burning oil unnaturally, but a good indicator is if the exhaust is smoking and shooting bluish white smoke out the back. That's a good indicator that there is a problem with the piston rings, the oil seals, somewhere that's causing oil to go into the combustion chamber and it's coming out of the exhaust that way. Or especially if you have a burning smell while you're riding it. Now, if that problem doesn't exist, it's probably that the guy that's selling you the bike is racing the bike a lot, or he has made some poor modifications to the bike that could be fixed easily, but it will cost a lot. So I'd say try and avoid this kind of bikes if you can. Now, the next question another viewer asked is, are KTMs expensive to maintain? Now, this is a true and false question. It's both. It depends. Well, in my view, KTMs are not really expensive to maintain. No, not really. It's true that the Austrian-made superbikes and their race dirt bikes are quite expensive and if not difficult to maintain because, well, they're competition machines. So EXE, F, those things, they have intervals, oil change intervals of hours or probably at least 1,000 kilometers if you go by mileage, and that's really stretching it quite a lot. But if you are intending to buy something, you know, smaller, especially the Indian-made bikes like the 390, 250, 125 Duke series, the RC series of that same displacement, then no, they are actually very cheap to maintain. They will have pretty long service intervals, and it's not that hard to, you know, to maintain those comparatively. Now the third question is, there are so many different FZ16 versions, can you please recommend a good one for me? There's like FZ16 V1 and V2, FZN 150 and 150i, I have no idea what is what. Okay, for this guy's question, it's I try to recommend that people who have this question try not to get yourself confused. There are actually only really two real different bikes under the Indian FZ family. They are the carbureted 153cc original, as well as the new 149cc fuel injected upgrade that came along later. And they come with a lot of names. The carbureted one tends to be called like Bison, FZ16, FZ16S, FZ16ST, with varying version numbers packed to it, and they are all really just cosmetic differences, like the pillion handle and a new dash, you know, new exhaust, car fairing or not. The fuel injected version tends to be called the FZFI, FZN 150 or some variation of that. So you really only have a choice between either you want a carbureted version or you want a fuel injected version, and the choice is quite simple. Do you want to deal with the carburetor and have a bit more power? Because the carbureted version does have a bigger engine displacement compared to the fuel injected version, but the fuel injected version is a lot easier to maintain comparatively because fuel injection. So it's up to you. There is really not much difference between the two in terms of power for everyday riding, and the ergonomics is rather similar. So it's really just a choice between you know, having a fuel injection or carburetor, whichever you're more comfortable with handling, and well, which one looks better to you. So the next question is, I just passed my 2B looking at the FZ16, FZ150 and Duke 200. I'm under the impression that KTM will need only genuine spare parts, whereas Yamaha can use high-end non-original parts. Wondering if maintenance will be significantly higher for KTM. I sort of have my eye on a Duke, but I am cautious about maintenance costs. Any advice is appreciated. Now, this is tied into that KTM question. Well, there is really no bike that will only need genuine parts. That is absolutely ridiculous, because the bike manufacturers themselves, they get their parts from other manufacturers. So other manufacturers make the parts for them. So this notion that a particular brand needs absolutely 100% genuine parts from the original manufacturer is kind of bullshit. You can use any part that fits onto your bike, like bolts, fairings, a new dashboard, new handlebars, new grips, cosmetic stuff, brake lines from other manufacturers, tires from other manufacturers, wheels as well, brake discs, brake pads. The only thing that usually requires an OEM manufacturer to supply the parts would be stuff that goes into the engine itself, and even then, you know, sometimes you could get away with, you know, a good third-party supplier as long as there is one that makes it. So just do your homework, look around the internet, ask around what parts are available if you don't want to get OEM, because OEM generally tends to be more expensive for less performance, but the only thing you are guaranteed with when buying OEM is that they are guaranteed to work with the bike, and they are guaranteed to last, you know, whatever service lifetime there is on that particular bike. Otherwise, you can pretty much get anything you want. So the next question I got from the next viewer is how you normally clean your bike. Well, this is a tough question, because I normally don't bother cleaning my bike unless I've been in the mud or off-road and, well, basically off pavement, and there's a lot of mud on the bike. Otherwise, I really don't bother. But if you really need to answer the question, basically a pail of water, a sponge and a cloth, and that's more than enough for me. Just wipe everything down. If there's a lot of mud, I'll just use a high pressured hose, either at a petrol station, or if you have somewhere you can use a pressure hose, just use it to wash off the thicker mud, and then after that wipe the rest down with plain water. And for the chain, well, it's WD-40 or kerosene to clean the chain. Then wipe it down with soapy water, remove everything. Then after that, really dry the chain off of that soapy water, and then re-lube the chain. Depending on where you are, if you live in a dry country, wet lube is great. For people like me that live in the tropics where it rains a lot, well, we use wet lube instead. A dry gel lube, you know, those kind of mucky stuff. Those are better for people like me. Now, once in a while, I'll usually send the bikes in to a groomer to get it waxed and polished, but that's only done like once or twice a year. So yeah, I usually don't bother, because what's the point? It's going to get dirty anyway, and it's not like a bit of dust is going to hurt the bike. Mud dust, but dust? No, never. I have a 2017 DRZ 400 SM and love it. What's your thought about the stock carburetor? I appreciate your opinion and knowledge. Okay, for you, I think it depends on what you want to do with your DRZ. The stock carb is pretty much great for everything else day to day, except if you want to race. Now, I used the stock carb and it felt great, and personally it's very punchy. It's perfectly great for everyday use. For pure performance, however, I recommend getting a FCR 39 or 41. That will help you push more fuel air mixture into the engine, more gas, more power, straight up, basically that. But that's only if you pair it with a 3x3 air mod as well as a 434 bore kit. Now, without these two, the gains from an FCR is minimal. It's pretty much useless. Like, you're just wasting gas and not extracting the most power out of it. With the 3x3, now you get more air, basically more air allows you to burn more gas, okay? And with the 434 bore kit, you can do more at the same time. So this gives more actual real power compared to just, you know, putting a new carburetor in. And of course, to balance everything out, you'll need the proper exhaust system and correct jetting. So it's not a simple thing as just throwing a bigger carb on a bike and then expecting wonderful performance, because that's not how bikes work. It's a balance between getting more gas into the engine, correct amounts of air to mix into that mixture, as well as an engine that actually can move that much displacement in the correct amount of time. Now, for the next question, this one is based on when I still had my DRZ. I had a BT090 with a 160 rear tire. So this guy is asking me, rear tire size 160, is there any chain rub on the DRZ? I'm using 150 rear, and when I apply chain lube, I can see a bit of oil on the sidewall and I need to clean it. Now, personally, when I was using the 160 BT090, there was no chain rub. I didn't get chain lube when I applied my lube on my chain and spun the tire around. But that's because I was using the BT090 on my DRZ, and that really depends on your kind of tires. So for example, my BT090, it doesn't get any chain rub because it has a slightly taller profile. But if you use something like Pilot Power with a 160 diameter, it may cause a bit of chain rub. Now, next question is reflective or tinted goggles on an MX helmet. Is it illegal in Singapore? It's a grey area. As far as I know, it is treated like sunglasses. So you can wear it in the daytime, but not in the nighttime. So usually, most traffic policemen, when they see me with tinted goggles in the daytime, nobody's gonna give me flack for it, and I don't usually wear it at night, I pull it down and use just my glasses at night. So generally in Singapore, nobody's going to give you a flag for it if you use tinted visors with your MX goggles. Last one, I see that you park your bikes in an open area. Do you cover all your bikes with a canvas, especially during rainy seasons like now, December? Will the rain corrode the bike long term without covering? Now this question is, yes, I used to. When I first started riding during my first year, I covered my bike every single day after I rode. So day in, day out, I cover it because I park in an open air car park where it's exposed to elements. But nowadays, not really, I don't bother because first of all, the bike is meant to be out in open. It's not made of paper. Rain isn't gonna melt your bike and then reduce it in a puddle and cause it to be goo. No, it's not. In fact, a lot of people worry about corrosion and water seeping in, which is a valid concern because water shouldn't get into your electrical components. But if you keep your rubber components, your rubber gaskets changed regularly so they are brand new and fresh, water usually never gets into these electrical components where it will corrode your metal and sensitive electrical parts. And pretty much everything else that's on the surface, well, it's meant to resist rain. That's the point of a motorcycle. Otherwise, you would just, ride them indoors everywhere. Now, the only thing I would concern myself is corrosion, and that usually happens on places like the chain and the fork and some of the other parts around your cockpit area that is of vital importance. The corrosion usually doesn't happen most of the time if you get a good quality bike with good quality parts. Corrosion usually happens if you get Indian-made bikes. Trust me, because I have an FZ16 that was made in India, it corroded like hell. But even then, the integral parts like the suspension never corroded, the handlebars never corroded, the chain never corroded, and the only thing that corroded were the little screws and stuff that went on the bike. And otherwise, even if it did face corrosion, if you don't ride it regularly, just increasing your riding intervals, riding it more regularly will keep the metal moving parts, rubbing each other and then removing any surface level corrosion and keeping it clean. And just general maintenance like lubing them keeps corrosion away. The only time I think covering your bike with a cover actually makes very, very good sense is to protect against sun damage, and that's if you really care about the cosmetics of your bike. So a lot of bikes, their original plastics are not particularly good against long-term exposure to sunlight. So sometimes you'll see old bikes with original plastics, they tend to be faded on one side, and that's because they've been parked under the sun for many, many years, 10, 15, 20 years, and then the sun just destroys the pigment on the plastics. But I mean, if you care about it, then cover it up. But in the short term, I mean, generally it doesn't really matter a lot, and it definitely doesn't matter against rain, and water is going to get under your cover anyway due to water vapor and condensation. That's it, simple fact of science. So I hope all these questions help you guys out. If you actually have any questions about it. Oh, one more question that I keep getting a lot, and that is, could you recommend me a bike, or could you recommend me a bike shop? I hate answering those questions because there is no good way to answer those questions. For those questions, you have to figure out them on your own. You have to go to the bike shop and ask yourself what fits your body, what fits your riding style, and bike shops treat different people differently. So my good experience with one bike shop may turn out to be a horrible experience for you. A bike that fits me may be horrible for you because I use it for this and you may use it for another reason. So next time, if anybody asks me, just remember, go and figure out for yourself. You have to make your own decision. I'll give you tips in future, but well, you have to make it out on your own. So I hope you enjoyed this video and stay safe on the roads. I'll see you next time. Peace out.